Okay, everybody, we're going to get started here. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Brian Geiser. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer for Inspire. And we are kicking off a series of very fascinating talks this week, which we will be streaming live on YouTube. We're streaming live now. These talks will be streamed out to YouTube for anyone to watch. Also, for residents can watch them in their apartments, and they can watch them in different parts of the building. So, yes, sir. Quick question.
I just want to know what clinical advisor, what does that mean?
Chief Clinical Officer, that means I oversee all of our healthcare and healthcare programs, initiatives, all of the clinical components of the services that we offer here at Inspire. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our two distinguished guests here. We're very lucky to have these two ladies here. So she is the award-winning professor of neuroscience and psychology and the incoming dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at NYU, where she studies the effects of physical activity and meditation on the brain. She's a best-selling author of the books Healthy Brain, Happy Life, and Good Anxiety, Harnessing the Power of the Most Misunderstood Emotion. Please welcome Dr. Wendy Suzuki. And she is a researcher, a coach, and she writes about emotional awareness, relational narratives, and the psychology of creative flow. She's a highly sought-after executive coach and the founder and CEO of Crate Mind, which is a technology-enabled framework for building emotional equilibrium. She has coached for Fortune 500 companies, and she's the author of the upcoming book, With Feeling, How Emotions Unlock Meaning, Courage, and Resilience. Please welcome Desi Levinson. And these two ladies are going to be talking today about a really, really important topic, which is family. We all have families, we all love our families, we also know the challenges that come with families. And so this topic is broad, wide-reaching, and affects all of us today. So we're happy to talk about this with you guys. So take it away.
Thank you. I'm taking the one that's already on. Okay. Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
So nice to see you all. I'll add one more thing to what Brian said. We're talking about families, but we're talking about the emotions that come with families. That's really our topic. And we thought that we would start with just a room introduction around this idea of emotions and invite you all, we're going to start, to give us and share a word or a color that describes how you're feeling right now. A word or a color. So I'll start just as you give you a little minute to think about that. I was telling them I take singing lessons every week, so I just took my singing lesson. I love it. So my word is flower. Flower.
I like it. My word is electric because you're wearing my favorite color, and I feel close, and I also feel electric for being here. So that is mine. Would anyone like to share their word right now?
Right.
My word is, I'll give you both. My word is overwhelmed, and my color is red.
Thank you.
Okay.
Overwhelmed
I'm just being
and
truthful.
red.
We like it. We like the truth telling. Anyone else? And we can repeat it, if people can't hear it.
Word or color?
I just made friends with Pat, so I may call on her. Pat, would you like to share a word or color? This is what you get for making friends.
Inquisitive.
Inquisitive. Fantastic. I love it. Anyone else? Inquisitive. Pat's word, which I like because...
Oh, here's it.
Yep.
I'm going to steal Brian's word and say overwhelmed.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Was that overwhelmed?
Overwhelmed was this woman's word?
I have the word tense.
Tense.
That's
Tense.
a good one right now.
Beautiful. Our runner, did you? Oh, did you have one? Relieved. Oh, lovely.
I like that.
That's good. Yes.
Inquisitive.
Inquisitive. Lots of inquisitive minds here today. Any other thoughts, colors, words to share? No, I'm sorry. I thought I saw his hand up, but maybe it was yours. Oh, yes. Anxious. Okay, yes. Lots. Lots of anxiety. I was anxious before my singing lesson, but I turned into flower after it. Anybody else? Anybody else?
I think that's good. Yeah, that's
good.
perfect.
So I'll jump in. So we're both going to share just a little bit more of an introduction. Brian gave kind of our corporate introduction, but we're both here as people. I'm here as a daughter, as an aunt, as a person. Yes, I'm incoming dean of the College of Arts and Science at New York University. I start on September 1st, and it's an awesome responsibility because I'm going to be responsible for 9,000 undergraduate brains. Oh my God, talk about anxiety. But I'm really excited to be here because what I love to do is take the science that I do. I'm a neuroscientist that studies how the brain adapts in our world and bring useful science to particular populations. And today's science that I'll be sharing together with Desi is the science around emotion and emotional regulation. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm excited to be here. Desi.
Thank you, Wendy. I too am here first and foremost as a human and as someone who, I too am a daughter. I'm also a mother of 2 teens who are currently very anxious around exams, and so I have picked up some of their anxiety. I also really share the familial overwhelmment. My parents are getting older, and as we navigate the stage of life where they want to be present for their grandchildren, but they're slowing down. And I am becoming very cognizant of my own emotions around that and my responsibility in relating to them and how my role and my narratives are changing in relation to, I've always been their child. Now I'm also becoming their caregiver, and I still need, and I'm even getting goosebumps as I say this, I still need them to be my mom and dad, and at the same time, they sometimes need me in ways that my children do, and even in greater ways or more complex ways. And so I guess some of it is, I am lucky in that we work with emotions. We work, my day-to-day life is understanding how humans human, understanding what happens in our heads, but also more importantly, what happens in our bodies. And we'll go through that because our emotions don't just live in our brain. We are entire nervous systems that emote. And being able to notice all those dynamics within us opens up space, gives us the chance to not just react, but respond more intentionally. And so we're hopeful that we can share that with you in order to reduce the overwhelm and in order to increase your clarity, your sense of agency, and your sense of internal and external trust.
So the title of this talk is around the love and pain of family. And so we decided, let's start with the hard stuff. Let's start with the pain first, and then we'll get to the love part. So Desi, do you want to
bring the pain over here.
Sorry.
That's all right.
That's your part.
Yes, that is my part. So in order to go bravely toward the pain, I want to start with how emotions work for us. Because we are often taught in the society of what I consider to be a false dichotomy between reason and emotion. We're taught that we should put our emotions aside and we should be rational, logical, and those are seen as opposites. However, it seems that science is showing us that the two are not only not separate, they're actually symbiotic. And I have come to understand them as stacked. We are first and foremost organisms that are trying to survive and thrive. So before a prefrontal cortex, before a brain that gives us the ability to have logic, to reason from A to B, we are organisms that move toward opportunity and move away from threat. And that is really toward opportunity and away from threat, away from that which can eat us, basically, that which can kill us. And so emotions are a system of information flow that we have developed, not just we, all animals seem to have emotions, even pre-vertebrates seem to have some version of emotions, not the complex feelings that we humans have, but pings, informational pings of go toward the warmth or the food, move away from the thing that will eat you, move away from the potential threat. And that's really how emotions work. The origin of the word emotion comes from the Latin emovere, which stands for energy in motion. So the emotions in our body are just information, energy flow, that is, boy, all of a sudden there's like this massive echo. We're in a cavern. Okay, so that gives us, I think Brian is,
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to
okay,
tweak your sound.
thank you. Anyway, we'll keep going, we'll roll with it. It gives us information about what is positive, what helps us survive and thrive, and what is negative, what to move away from. However, because we have evolved to have a prefrontal cortex, we've evolved to have symbols and language. We layer on top of those emotions the narratives that we call feelings. We put words toward the positive or the negative and name them. We say, I feel sad, or angry, or fearful. I feel joyful, or hopeful, or loving. And those are narratives that we hold of how we interpret the pings of positive or negative. And so the opportunity here is to open up space between what we're experiencing. So if I am really trepidatious before something that is a high stakes situation, or I'm going to encounter someone who gives me a little bit of anxiety, the opportunity is to open up space and say, okay, body, thank you for giving me the information that I am currently perceiving some level of threat, or I am perceiving some level of aversion. Now, let me just pause. So the first part of clarity is noticing. Pause and notice. And then let me recognize the narratives that are coming up. Is it that I always feel like I'm not going to be good enough? Is it that I always feel like I will let someone down? My personal thing tends to be guilt. I always feel that I will somehow be at fault for something if things are not perfect. And so recognizing that these are narratives that have helped me through life, that I generally, and most of us learn these narratives very early on in our relational dynamics with our parents, with our loved ones, at school, and then early in life. And understanding how are those narratives playing through us as the emotional pains happen. And so back to pain, I know that was kind of a long segue, but hopefully for a reason. Back to pain, or emotions that we perceive as negatively valenced, things that feel uncomfortable. It is useful to recognize that there is a difference between real threat, meaning fear, and nebulous kind of uncomfortable threat, which is anxiety or overwhelm. So if something really scary, a bear, tiger, or something's coming at you, you don't feel anxious. You just run or freeze, or like there's no sense of negative discomfort and struggle because you're just hightailing it out of there. But most of the time in our protected lives, what we experience is not that real threat of you're going to get eaten. We experience the activation of our brain trying to protect us against perceived threat. And very often that gets interpreted as something's uncomfortable, something's dangerous, someone's out to get me. And so these really uncomfortable emotions that come up often around family, because family has the ability to activate in us these long narratives that have threaded through time, like an Ariadne's thread that we hold for the years, and then they get built and they get reaffirmed because we notice the things that confirm our biases. And so if we notice those and we're willing to lean toward them with curiosity, with inquisitiveness, with a willingness to say, well, what if for this one moment I'm going to open up space and I'm going to give it a chance to just be. Let me see if I get eaten, because I usually won't get eaten. Let me see what happens, and approach the situation with a beginner's mind, with a fresh mind, and don't assume that this time someone will disappoint you, or they won't understand you, or they will let you down. And so I will pause here because Wendy is getting all the fun parts of emotion, and turn it over to Wendy, who's going to talk about how we can take that same positive valence of emotion and turn it into something meaningful that gives us strength, that gives us the something to look for, the reason to pause.
Thanks, Ceci. I'm going to come back because I want to ask you a question about what you just said, which is, that sounds hard. How long? So, beginner's mind, I've heard of that, I try it myself. It's hard, and if you've taken in this information for the first time, am I going to fail the first time that I try it? How long should I give myself? Give me a timeline to get a little bit good at this, do you think?
I think it is useful to move away from the binary of failing or succeeding. So the way that I approach it in my personal life, and especially with what I teach my kids as well, is if we try, if we move toward things with curiosity, and curiosity is this Swiss Army knife that gets you out of the most difficult situations, because we have two modalities. We have an expansive openness that usually is when something is positively valenced, we move toward it with an open heart and mind, or a constricted, contractive kind of shrinking away, which is how we move away from things. And so if you just think of that, and you think of like, can I inch myself closer and be a little more open? And it doesn't have to be 100% more open, it can be like 10% more open. When you walk into a difficult conversation, just a little bit more of like, okay, I'm not gonna assume that it'll all go kablooey. I'm just going to open up a little bit and lean toward it with a sense of curiosity. Then sometimes, not always, I'm not gonna guarantee you that 100% of the time it'll turn out okay, but enough times you will discover something. You will grow in that uncomfortable open space, and then the next time will be a little bit easier, and you will inch a little closer, and then a little closer. And none of us walk around with open hearts, again, 100% of the time, because that's too vulnerable. At the same time, I think that we owe it not just to ourselves and our loved ones, but at this point we owe it to the world to walk around with a little more open and with a few less assumptions.
Beautiful, thank you so much. So that was a beautiful journey through difficult emotions, how they come up, what they mean, how we can approach it. But we wanted to talk not only about the difficult emotions, but the joyful, the happy emotions that come with family. And this is the story time part of our presentation, because sometimes stories are the best illustration. So I'm going to share with you in the next 5 or 7 minutes my story. So first thing you need to know, I'm an expert on the brain areas important for memory. I've studied that my entire career. I know what brain structures are involved, I know how memories are formed, I know what happens when dementia comes in that starts to eat away at our memories. That's what I've devoted my scientific life to. And so it was very scary when my mom called me to tell me that my dad wasn't feeling well, and that he had told her that he got lost driving back from the coffee shop that he had driven to for the last 20 years, every afternoon to get his afternoon cup of coffee. It was only about 7 blocks away. And that was very scary to me, because I know that this key memory area of the brain called the hippocampus, you have one on your right and one on the left side of your brain, critical for forming memories of what happens, all the facts you learn, but particularly for spatial memory, learning how to get to Zabar's, you know, from here, what subway to take or what streets to walk down. All of that is highly dependent on the hippocampus. So I knew his memory was problematic and his hippocampus was hurting. And so I quickly called my neurology friends at Stanford. They live in California, and got him to a neurologist. And so he was diagnosed with dementia. And it was very precipitous dementia. He went from everything seems fine, seems like the same, you know, dad I've talked to really a noticeable loss of memory. And this got me thinking. So he got a little bit better, he felt better, he was seeing the neurologist, we got the diagnosis, things were kind of equalizing out. And I realized something very important, that is that my parents were getting older. And while, let me make this very clear, while it was very clear that my parents loved my brother and I as Asian American, third generation, they're second generation, they were born here too. That culture, that generation, they don't say I love you out loud to each other. We don't, as adults, we had never, my family had never said I love you out loud to each other. And I started thinking about this as my dad got diagnosed with dementia, and I thought, you know, I really want to start saying this. And then I thought, ooh, how do I do this? Because they live in California, I usually call them on the phone once a week. And I thought, well, I can't just blurt it out. I think that would be too hard for me to do after never saying it ever to them for my entire adult life. I think I have to ask permission. Maybe I'll have a conversation about, you know, what do you think about saying these three words? So I decided that this one Sunday that I usually call was going to be the Sunday of the big ask. So I was going to ask them.
What?
The big ask. Okay, I gave it a title. It was the Sunday, like I put it on the calendar. This is the Sunday I'm going to ask my parents whether we could start saying I love you. And I started getting really nervous, and it's like, it's so annoying. How come this is so hard? And I realized I wasn't annoyed. I was just scared. I was scared that they were going to say, no, I don't. I really, you know, you know that, you know, that thing you said, that I do too. But the only way to know was to actually ask. So I decided, okay, I am going to go through it with it. I'm going to do it. This is going to be the Sunday of the big ask. And my theme was going to be, you know, keep it light. No big deal. That's how I was going to try and approach it. So I call my mom, and usually I call the house, and usually my mom picks up. I talk to her, tell her all my stories, and then give the phone to my dad, tell him all the same stories, and then the Sunday call is over. So as usual, my mom picks it up, and we have our usual conversation. What happened to you? What happened to me? And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, I said, keep the light, right? Hey, Mom, what do you think about if we start saying I love you at the end of these conversations? Silence. Really, really long silence. And I'm holding my breath. I didn't know what she was going to say. And finally, she said, I think that's a great idea. And I went, oh my God. Okay, good. And so we finished our conversation. She agreed. Took a little while, pregnant pause, but she agreed. And then I ran out of things to say. I finished all of my activities of the week. And then the conversation kind of started to feel a little bit tense. I describe it as kind of two animals circling each other. Because it's one thing to agree to say, I love you for the first time to each other as adults, and it's another thing to actually say it. So we both knew the conversation was coming to the end, and we both knew we had agreed to say this, but somebody had to say it. So I'm the one that asked, and so you know, my responsibility. So I said, okay, I love you, Mom. And she said, I love you too. And she said, Dad, telephone, Wendy's on the phone. And I said, okay, so glad that was over. That was so hard, but I got through it. And I knew that my mom was always going to be harder to ask than my dad. So my dad, still having these regular conversations, his memory wasn't great, but we could have a normal conversation. And so I told him about my week. I asked him, can we start saying I love you? He agreed. We said I love you. And I hung up the phone. And the Sunday of the big ask was over. But I burst out crying because that was the first time as an adult that I had ever said, I love you to my own parents. And I knew instinctively that I had changed something in our family dynamic. There was always going to be the before the Sunday Big Ask and after the Sunday Big Ask when we started to say this to each other. So a week went by and I called again and my mom answered, and I'm happy to report that my I love you with my mom was much less awkward the second time. So we got a little bit better, not as Disney-like I love you, but more a normal I love you. And then my dad got on the phone and I was all ready to remind him that, we had agreed to do this. And he surprised me because that Sunday and every Sunday after that, he remembered to say, I love you first. And remember, he couldn't quite remember whether it was Thanksgiving or Christmas that I was visiting. But he remembered from a whole week ago. That was just amazing. And the thing is that I'm a neuroscientist that studies memory, so I know why this happened. And it's because emotional resonance is one of the things that makes memories stick the most. So whether it was because his adult daughter had never asked before whether she could say, I love you. That was a big event for him. It was a big event for me. But that made his memory stick for a long time, even as his dementia got worse. And it's, this is the joy and pain of family. Some memories are really, really precious, and they stick with us. And that was one that I will keep for the rest of my life, and made me realize how important our memories are and why I study memory. So as residents and parents and as children, you can take different things from that story, but the connection and the bond of that core emotion of love that we share with our family members, whether they're 90 or 40, is the same. And so I wanted to share that as our illustration of the love that comes from family.
Thank you, Wendy. And every time I hear you tell this story, I love you more. If Wendy and I had been friends at the time, this happened before I fully knew her, or if I had been coaching her, one of the things I would have reminded her is that the things that give us the greatest pause, the most fear, the most reticence, are also the highest stakes. Whatever we fear we will lose, as in Wendy's case, that there might be silence, that they might not reciprocate, not because she doubted that they loved her, but because it is very difficult to go out and open your heart and then have someone else react by closing up further. And at the same time, that fear, that internal discomfort, and I differentiate here because it's not a real fear of getting eaten or getting in trouble. It's an internal discomfort because the stakes are very high. That is our weather vane. That is our weather vane of what needs to be said, what is important and what is still left, what work is still left undone. And so before we open up for questions, I wanted to kind of bring it full circle and note that yes, there's a lot of discomfort, tension, overwhelmment, stress, and there's a lot of love or possibility for love and belonging and warmth. But the narratives we weave around the opportunity and threat between the two, the relationality between those two, is up to us. And the decision we make when we walk into every conversation, whether as parents coming to visit our, whether as children coming to visit our parents, sorry, still in parent mode, or as parents waiting to receive our children, is really the importance of deciding what is the memory I want to be forming today. Is it one where people meet my expectations, that I will be let down, that things will not work out? Or is it one where people meet my hope that they too can open up a little bit, and that my stepping out on a limb, my fearful desire to feel loved, to feel connected, will too be met with someone saying, I love you too, me too, it's okay. We are going to try at this again, over and over again. And back to Wendy's question to me, what happens if it doesn't succeed? Or what happens if we try and the other person lets us down? Well, we try again, because every opportunity we get with them is an opportunity that is still here, where we're still here, and we have the chance to make another memory. And so before we open it up for questions, and we'll have some handouts leave behind just with little prompts for you, we wanted to just leave you with a wish, an invocation, to think of every opportunity, every exchange, every relational moment as the opportunity to use emotion to make a new memory, to embed it stronger. And hopefully it will be a good memory. So we are at time. I wanted to open it up for questions, or, yeah?
Yes.
So thank you guys, that was beautiful, the story, and Desi, your description of pain and painful emotion. One of the things you said brought me to a place, one of my favorite shows that I've recently watched is a show called Ted Lasso. Has anybody seen this show? Great show. Have you guys seen it? So Ted is this wonderful character who he experiences a lot of things in his life, a lot of pain, a lot of wonderful emotions and so forth, and it's kind of his journey of living through all of that. And one of the lessons I learned from Ted Lasso is what you said earlier, is when you get into a situation that's very difficult, try to take it on from a place of curiosity and learning. So when I do this now when I'm in a tenseful moment with someone I love or someone I'm working with, I try to step back and say, what can I learn from this moment right now? Right? Rather than come at it from a judgmental place or a critical place, it's what can I learn from this interaction? What can I learn from this person in this moment? Because we're all here as sort of teachers to each other, right? Every moment is an opportunity to learn something new. So it's come at it from a place of almost childhood curiosity, that there's always something that you can learn from these interactions that seem frustrating or painful or very challenging or difficult. So I related to that a little bit. I also wanted to just recognize that the people in this room, most of the people in the room, are either residents or family members. And that's one of the reasons we crafted this program, is because we understand that the journey that you've all been through is one of so many mixed emotions, right? There's a lot of joy and amazing things that have happened in your lives over the past, say, year, but there's also a lot of challenge and a lot of painful things that have happened for all of you. And I think we wanted to recognize that. This stage of your lives are not easy stages, and there's lots of decisions that have to be made that are very, very difficult. I think for the adult children in the room, I think helping your parent to come to a place where they make the decision to move into a new environment, a new home, is a very challenging thing to do. And there's a lot of emotion around that. And one of the emotions I can imagine is there for you is guilt. There's a lot of guilt that comes with these types of things. And for the folks in the room who work here, we know this to be true. Family members struggle with guilt when it comes to making big decisions about, what am I going to do next? Where am I going to live next? Where do I go next? So we wanted to just recognize these things. But at the same time, the adult children or the spouses who are in this room are doing that out of total love for their loved one, whether it's your husband, wife, or your parents. And so there's a lot of love mixed in with a lot of challenge and painful emotion. And we wanted to recognize that. And have you, if you're willing and would like to, share some of that experience, we would love to take that on and let these two experts process that a little bit. So if there is an adult child or a spouse we have a hand up.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I want to ask you something. Do you think that someone coming here because of the stress of leaving their apartment and their life and everything and coming here, and it's a totally new thing, totally different way of living, totally different everything. Can this cause memory loss, do you think?
So that's a great question. So the question is, does the stress of moving into Inspire any new residents as an older person, can that cause memory loss? So what I can say is long-term stress, that is like military, what causes PTSD. PTSD comes with shrinkage of the hippocampus, I can tell you that for sure. Is that event stressful? Yes, it is. Is it stressful enough to cause memory loss? I mean, if it goes on for years, perhaps. But everybody has to deal with stress. Thank goodness that every little stress thing doesn't kill my hippocampus. But that's one of the reasons why we want to give these talks, that your hippocampus is one of the most valuable brain areas that you have. And not that I'm saying no stress at all, but that's just inspiration to get curious about learning how to decrease my stress levels. How do I approach these situations, these stressful situations, with curiosity? How would you answer that question, Bessie?
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. I think that any heightened moment of stress, especially extreme stress, can be what we term a moment of trauma. And trauma can be momentary, or trauma can be chronic, meaning repeated trauma. However, whether something is traumatic to the organism or not depends on the surrounding circumstances and the individual's ability and internal narrative to withstand trauma. So someone moving into a facility such as this one, when their internal narrative is one of preparation or hopefulness or eagerness, or even, let's be realistic, just an acceptance that this is the next step. Plus, and I think this is what is most important, them seeing that they are surrounded by care and that they're not losing, while they may be losing some of the familiar opportunities, they are not losing the full breadth of what they thought they had, then this stress does not necessarily turn into long-term trauma. However, if they are to move and feel abandoned, then that can absolutely turn to long-term trauma, which, whether or not it causes permanent memory loss, may very well cause psychological turmoil that is very lasting. And so if I were in the situation of making a decision such as this, I would try to mitigate all the other circumstances around them not feeling abandoned, not feeling a sense of loss, and work on helping them reestablish a new narrative where the memories, and particularly their sense of self in the moment, can leave this place as something that is not a new surprise every time they wake up, but is something that they are eager to weave into their present. Yes?
This is my husband. My husband's been here since October, and I think he's made a very successful adjustment. And all of the stress you talk about, that's something I'm experiencing,
Mhm.
not him.
Yeah.
I am much more stressed out than he is. So my hippocampus, or whatever it is probably shriveled and in terrible shape.
No, 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 I'm sure it's nice and big and fat and fluffy. But can I give you 2 tools to make your beautiful hippocampi even bigger, fatter, and fluffier? And this goes for every pair of hippocampi in this room. So tool number 1, that is both a stress reliever and a hippocampal fluffer upper. That's the technical term if you're wondering, is physical activity. So moving your body, and I don't mean, go run a marathon. I mean, take a 10-minute walk. A 10-minute walk clinically has been shown to decrease anxiety and depression levels and increase positive emotional states. But that sounds a little bit fluffy. What does it do for your brain? Every time you're moving your body, you are flooding your brain with different neurochemicals, some of which you've heard of, like noradrenaline, dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. That is a mood booster, a stress decreaser. 10 minutes can decrease your stress level. So I'm literally go out, take a walk down around this block, and that can significantly, clinically decrease your anxiety and your stress levels. Tool number 2 for everybody's hippocampus is breath work. There is a part of the nervous system that everybody should know about. It's the de-stressing part of your nervous system. The technical name is parasympathetic nervous system. And this naturally, after a stressful event, the bear comes at you and you're running away, this is the part of your nervous system that kicks in to slow your heart rate down, to slow your respiration down. Of course, after the bear has gone away, after you have a moment to breathe. And so if we have this, how can we activate it? I need that activated more in my life, right? And the easiest way to do that is deep breathing. Simply inhaling, exhaling in a deep way. That's what the parasympathetic nervous system does naturally, and that's what you have conscious control over. This is why monks hundreds of years ago turned to deep breathing as the most oldest form of meditation. It got them into that calm state. So deep breathing for stress, 10-minute walk for stress.
Yes, the hippocampus,
Yes.
as we get older,
Mm-hmm.
obviously there's going to be some degeneration to the hippocampus as it is to any part of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, besides deep breathing,
Mm-hmm.
are there any nutrients? Is there anything one can do to slow the aging process?
Yes.
Perhaps maintain that?
Yes. So my number 1 tool to do specifically for the hippocampus is, goes back to my first tool, which is physical activity. Because physical activity is the only thing that we know that can grow new hippocampal brain cells, including if you are, it doesn't matter whether you're 5 years old or 85 years old. Because what it does is, I told you that every time you move your body, there's this rush of neurochemicals. I call it a neurochemical bubble bath that happens in your brain. And one of those ingredients in that bubble bath is a growth factor. That growth factor goes directly to your hippocampus and grows brand new brain cells. New brain cells don't grow all over your brain, but we are so lucky that one of the brain areas in adults, and all of us here, where new brain cells can be born is the hippocampus. So again, you don't have to go run a marathon, but increase that aerobic activity with a power walk, and that is going to increase your growth factor in your hippocampus.
Thank you.
Yes? No? Did you? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Any other questions? I also have something to add specifically around retaining retaining internal narratives and retaining, maybe not necessarily growing new neurons in the hippocampus, but ensuring that the narratives that we hold remain fresh. And so anything around one of the reasons why we have evolved to tell so many stories is that we tell stories to ourselves, whether we want to or not, whether we're silent or not. We constantly recount our experience of reality. And so especially as we get older, writing those down or even recording them, if writing is difficult, turning your phone on or a recording device, and being able to speak those narratives and tell what is most salient, what is most important to you at any one moment, and then being able to re-listen to that actually keeps you tethered to your sense of reality, your sense of narrative, your bonds to the ways you interpret the world. It also has the added benefit of being truly de-stressing. This is why some people journal throughout life, because by building a relationship to our internal self, by building the ability to not just narrate, kind of let the brain just chatter on, but intentionally putting the narrative down and then being able to look at it from a sense of perspective, we slow time down. And time can be very elastic in the way that we interpret it, and especially in the way that we emote through it. And so that's another way, not in lieu of exercise, but in addition to exercise, to build relationship with the present moment. And I think of it very much as a writing meditation or a thinking meditation. Meditation doesn't just have to be mind empty, it can be mind aware and mind conscious. Any other questions? Yes?
Wendy, I have a quick question for you. If you, for whatever reason, are not able to get up and take a fast-paced walk around the block, could you get those same bubble bath of energy and neurons and everything going by just doing upper body physical exercise?
Sure. There's lots of different, it's really movement. Movement is the key. So maybe it's gardening. Maybe it is, just punching just with your upper body if you have lower body mobility. You already know what will get your heart rate up. Just to share, one of the things that I took up during the pandemic to keep my heart rate up is speed house cleaning. It's very useful because it's really aerobic, and my house has never been so clean in my whole time. So yeah, be creative with that movement. You don't have to put on your Lycra and go down to the gym, or although I know there's lots of beautiful classes that you can go down to the gym in your beautiful Lycra, but there's lots of other things that you can do. So let's just quickly give them, we wanted to make this, Destiny and I really wanted to make this useful and have tools that you could walk away with. So what are your favorite tools that you want them to walk away with? And I'll add mine.
So the way I tend to look through just at difficult moments is the three pillars, and they happen to be pillars of CRATE as well, are clarity, agency, and trust. Meaning, do I have clarity of what is going on? Do I have an internal clarity around my own narrative? And that's where we stop and notice what is going on, what emotions are coursing through me, what are the narratives, what are the feelings I am calling those emotions. So take a moment to just notice that. Then understanding your own sense of agency. What do I choose to do about this? Can I step toward it, even just a little bit, with a sense of curiosity, with a sense of inquiry, and be a little more open-hearted? Can I make intentional choices about the memory that I am trying to craft in this moment? And then trust is the part that you hone over time, both internally through introspection, the trust that you can, the trust that this is worth it, because we're not pretending this is very easy. And so the internal centering through breath, through walking, through the ability to just be very intentional in your interactions with other people, that inner trust then gets reflected and builds more outer trust. Because more often than not, people will meet you where you're at. And if you approach them with open-heartedness, or at least a little bit of openness, they too try to open up a little, because we have mirror neurons. We mimic each other whether we're conscious of it or not.
That's beautiful. I love the way you talk about that. The 3 words that I would want you to leave with are curiosity, movement, and stories. So thank you so much for your attention. And
Thank you.
we'll be around, so.